How I turned the tables on my family. I never thought I'd be posting one of these epic family drama stories, but after everything that's happened over the past year, I need to get this off my chest. Fair warning, this is going to be long, but I promise it's worth the read. This is the story of how my parents betrayed me, how my sister manipulated them, and how I finally stood up for myself after decades of being the responsible one. The family dynamic, setting the stage. I'm 34F, the oldest of two daughters. From the time I could remember, there was always an unspoken dynamic in our household. I was the responsible one who would take care of things, while my younger sister Megan, 31F, was the baby of the family who needed protection and special treatment. When I was 16, I got my first job at a local grocery store, working weekends and after school. Not because my parents couldn't provide for me, but because I wanted independence and to save for college. My parents were middle class. Dad, 62M, worked as a sales manager for a manufacturing company, and Mom, 60F, was an elementary school teacher. We lived in a nice 4-bedroom house in a good school district in suburban Portland. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. Megan, on the other hand, never held a job in high school. She was focusing on her social development, according to my mother. While I was working 20-plus hours a week, maintaining a 4.0 GPA, and participating in debate club, Megan was struggling to pass her classes and spending most weekends at parties. When she crashed the car my parents bought her for her 16th birthday, a much nicer car than the used Honda I had saved for, they immediately replaced it, saying she needed reliable transportation. This pattern continued through college. I went to a state university on a partial academic scholarship, worked part-time all 4 years, took out minimal student loans, and graduated with honors. Megan attended 3 different colleges in 5 years, changing her major 6 times, before finally getting a degree in communications that our parents fully funded. While I lived in a cramped apartment with 3 roommates to save money, Megan had a nice 1-bedroom apartment that my parents paid for because she needed her space to focus on her studies. After college, I landed an entry-level position at a financial consulting firm. I worked 60-hour weeks, lived frugally, and paid off my student loans within 3 years. By 28, I had worked my way up to senior consultant, bought my own 2-bedroom condo in a nice part of the city, had a solid 401k, an emergency fund, and was completely debt-free. I was doing well, and I was proud of it. Megan, meanwhile, moved back home after college and cycled through a series of jobs, never keeping one for more than a few months. She quit because her boss was mean, or the work was boring, or she needed to find her passion. She lived in our parents' finished basement rent-free until she was 29, occasionally working retail jobs, but mostly spending her time trying various get-rich-quick schemes and MLMs. Every few months, she'd announce she had found her calling, selling essential oils, becoming an Instagram influencer, flipping furniture, drop-shipping Asian beauty products, but none of these ventures ever turned a profit. Despite the obvious differences in our life choices, I loved my family and maintained a good relationship with them. We had Sunday dinners together most weeks, and I call my parents regularly. Megan and I weren't close, but we were cordial. I never resented that our parents seemed to have different expectations for us. I just accepted that was how things were. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. The financial crisis, when I stepped in. 5 years ago, when I was 29, my family hit a financial crisis. Dad had been having health issues for a while, high blood pressure, prediabetes, and then a minor heart attack that required surgery. Even with insurance, the medical bills were substantial. At the same time, the company he worked for was downsizing, and he was offered early retirement. It wasn't a great package, but with his health concerns, he took it. That's when I discovered how precarious my parents' financial situation really was. They had refinanced their mortgage several times over the years to pay for renovations, Megan's college expenses, and to consolidate credit card debt. The housing market crash in 2008 had left them underwater on their mortgage. They had very little in retirement savings because they had dipped into their 401(k) for emergencies over the years. And they had accumulated about $45,000 in credit card debt. They were 3 months behind on their mortgage payments when they finally told me how bad things were. The bank was threatening foreclosure. Mom was in tears. Dad looked defeated in a way I'd never seen before. They were facing the possibility of losing the home they'd lived in for 25 years. "We don't know what to do," Mom said, her voice trembling. "We've worked so hard all our lives, and now we might end up with nothing." I looked at their financial statements spread out on the kitchen table, the table where I'd done my homework, where we'd had countless family meals. I couldn't bear the thought of them losing everything. "Let me help," I said. "I can cover the mortgage payments temporarily until you get back on your feet." The relief on their faces was immediate. Dad hugged me tightly, tears in his eyes. "You're a lifesaver, sweetheart. It'll just be for a little while until we sort things out." That little while turned into 5 years. I took over their $2,300 monthly mortgage payments. I also started covering their car loans, $500 per month, and helped with credit card minimum payments, $700 per month, when they fell behind. All in all, I was putting about $3,500 a month toward their debts while managing my own life and expenses. It wasn't easy. I had to put off some of my own financial goals, like saving for a larger home or taking nice vacations. But I never complained because they were my parents, and I was in a position to help. I assumed they were grateful and that they recognized the sacrifices I was making. Throughout this time, Megan continued to live in their basement. She occasionally contributed by buying groceries, but never paid rent or helped with any major expenses. She was still finding her path, according to Mom. When I gently suggested that Megan might be able to help with some bills, Mom became defensive. "Your sister isn't as fortunate as you are," she said. "She doesn't have your financial stability or your confidence. We can't put that pressure on her right now." I backed off, not wanting to create tension. In retrospect, I should have pushed harder for everyone to take responsibility. The discovery when I found the will. Last month, I was at my parents' house helping Dad organize some paperwork for his taxes. Since I'd been handling so much of their finances, he asked me to help sort through some of the documents in their home office filing cabinet. "There's a lot of old statements and policies in there," he said. "I'm not sure what we need to keep for the IRS." While organizing the papers, I came across a thick manila envelope labeled Last Will and Testament, updated 2024. I wasn't snooping. It was mixed in with tax documents, but seeing the recent date caught my attention. My parents had mentioned updating their will after Dad's heart scare, but they hadn't discussed the details with me. Curious, I opened the envelope. What I found inside made my blood run cold. They had changed their will to leave everything to Megan. The house that I was paying for, their retirement accounts, family heirlooms, their vintage car collection that Dad had lovingly restored over decades, even my grandmother's jewelry that Mom had always promised would be mine someday. Everything was going to Megan. My inheritance. A measly $5,000 and a paragraph that read, "To our daughter Julia, who has proven herself capable and financially independent, we leave the sum of $5,000 as a token of our appreciation for her self-sufficiency. We know she understands that her sister requires more security for her future." I stood there in their home office, hands shaking, reading and rereading the document. The reasoning continued in another section. "It is our belief that our daughter Megan needs the security of this inheritance more than her sister, who has proven she can take care of herself. We trust that Julia will continue to succeed on her own merits and will support this decision out of love for her sister." I felt physically ill. For 5 years, I had been paying their mortgage on a house that would never be mine, while my sister, who had contributed nothing to our family's financial well-being, would get everything. The betrayal cut deep, not just the uneven distribution, but the fact that no one had thought to discuss this with me while I was actively supporting them financially. I carefully put the will back in the envelope and completed the tax organization task as if nothing had happened. I made small talk with Dad, kissed him on the cheek when I left, and drove home in a daze. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the sacrifices I'd made, the vacations not taken, the bigger house I hadn't bought, the investments I'd put off, all to help my parents maintain their lifestyle and keep their home. And all the while, they were planning to leave everything to my sister, who had never sacrificed anything for them. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about the message they were sending, that my responsibility, hard work, and generosity were being taken for granted, even penalized. Meanwhile, Megan's dependence was being rewarded. The reckoning, when I did the math. The next day, I took a personal day from work. I needed time to think, to process what I discovered, and to decide what to do next. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and opened my financial records. I went through every bank statement from the past 5 years, highlighting each payment I'd made to my parents or on their behalf. Mortgage payments, car loan payments, credit card payments, home repairs, medical bills, it all added up. The total staggered me, $208,743.65. Over $200,000. That was more than my parents' house had appreciated in value during that time. It was enough for a down payment on a beautiful home of my own. It was years of retirement savings that I'd never get back. I created a spreadsheet with every payment, date, and amount. I took screenshots of the bank transfers and kept them in a folder on my computer. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with this information yet, but I wanted it documented. Then I made a decision that would change everything. I stopped all payments immediately. I called my bank and canceled the automatic transfers. I removed my parents' accounts from my bill pay system. I withdrew the authorization for their credit card payments. And then I waited. The confrontation, when they realized I knew. It took exactly 16 days for my phone to explode. Mom called first, on a Tuesday morning while I was at work. I stepped out of a meeting to take the call. "Honey, did you forget to make the mortgage payment?" The bank called and said it's past due. I took a deep breath and replied calmly, "I didn't forget. I've decided to stop making your payments." There was a stunned silence on the other end then. "But why?" "We're counting on you. We might lose the house." "I found the will, Mom." Another silence, longer this time. Then her voice, smaller. "Oh, yes. Oh, I found out that after 5 years of paying your mortgage, I'm being left $5,000 in your will, while Megan gets everything else, including the house I've been paying for." "Well, you know, it's just that Megan needs more help," she began, her voice defensive. "And I've needed less help because I've been working since I was 16, I interrupted. "I've been responsible with my money. I've made good choices. And for the past 5 years, I've also been responsible for your money and your choices." "That's not fair." Mom's voice rose. "We've had medical issues, I know about Dad's health problems. I've helped pay those bills too. But that doesn't explain why you would take my financial support while planning to cut me out of your will." I heard shuffling on the other end, and then Dad's voice came on the line. "Julia, this is ridiculous. We're your parents. You can't just stop helping us because of some document you snooped around and found." "I wasn't snooping. You asked me to organize your tax documents, remember? The will was in the same file. That's beside the point." Dad's voice was rising now. "This isn't fair. Why should we have to worry about bills at our age? Megan can't help us." That's when I delivered the line that silenced them both. "And why should I keep paying for a house that you've made sure I'll never own? Why should I keep supporting parents who see my financial responsibility as a reason to take advantage of me rather than appreciate me. I won't tolerate this disrespect anymore. From now on, I'm living my own life. Mom started crying in the background. Dad started yelling something about family obligations. I hung up. They called back immediately. I silenced my phone. They called my work line. I let it go to voicemail. They sent text messages, first pleading, then angry, then threatening. I turned off notifications. That evening, I sent them a simple email. I've contributed $208,743.65 to your household expenses over the past 5 years. I've attached a spreadsheet documenting every payment. I did this out of love and a desire to help, not with any expectation of repayment or inheritance. However, I've now realized that my generosity has been taken for granted and even used against me. I'm no longer in a position to continue this financial support. I wish you the best in resolving your financial situation, and I'm open to discussing this further once you've had time to reflect on the situation. Julia, I attached the spreadsheet but not the screenshots. I wanted them to know I had receipts, but I wasn't trying to humiliate them. The fallout when the family took sides. The next few days were chaos. Megan called me screaming that I was trying to make our parents homeless. Apparently, no one had told her I had been covering their bills all these years. Our parents had let her believe they were managing fine on their retirement income. "How could you do this to them?" she shrieked into the phone. "They're old. Dad has heart problems. Do you want them to die from stress?" I stayed calm and simply said, "Interesting that you're so concerned about their home now. Since you're getting it in the will, maybe you should start making the payments." She went quiet, then hissed, "They told you about that?" "No, Megan. They didn't tell me anything. I found out by accident while helping Dad with his taxes." "Well, they have their reasons," she said defensively. "I'm not as lucky as you. I don't have your income or your stability." "Luck had nothing to do with it," I replied. "I worked for everything I have, and now I'm choosing to work for myself, not for parents who don't appreciate what I've done for them." She hung up on me, and within hours, the extended family started taking sides. Aunts and uncles were texting me, some saying I was heartless for abandoning my parents, others quietly admitting they understood my position. Aunt Karen, Mom's sister, wrote, "How could you be so selfish? Family helps family. Period." Uncle Dave, Dad's brother, was more understanding. "Your parents made a mistake, but cutting them off completely seems harsh. Can't you work something out?" Cousin Rachel sent a supportive message. "I've watched you carry the financial burden for years while Megan contributes nothing. It's about time someone called out this dynamic. Stay strong." I posted nothing on social media, made no public drama, but simply stood my ground. Meanwhile, Megan was posting tearful Instagram stories about family betrayal, and when someone you trusted stabs you in the back, without any context, trying to paint herself as the victim. She never mentioned the will, or the fact that I'd been paying the bills all along. Some mutual friends who only knew Megan's side of the story started sending me concerned messages. A few even unfriended me on social media. I didn't bother to defend myself publicly. Those who really knew me understood that I wouldn't have made this decision lightly. Mom and Dad continued their campaign of guilt and manipulation. Mom left voicemails crying about how they might be homeless soon. Dad sent angry texts about how I was destroying the family. They even showed up at my workplace one afternoon, causing a scene in the lobby until I agreed to speak with them briefly in the coffee shop next door. "We're behind on everything," Dad said, pushing bank statements across the table toward me. "The mortgage company is starting foreclosure proceedings. The credit card companies are threatening collections. We can't make the car payments." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said calmly. "Have you spoken with a financial advisor? Or considered downsizing? We shouldn't have to sell our home." Mom hissed, mindful of keeping her voice down in the public space. "We worked all our lives for that house. Actually, I've been working for that house for the past 5 years, I corrected her. And now I'm choosing to work for my own home instead. So that's it? You're just going to let us lose everything because you're jealous of what we might leave Megan someday. Dad's face was getting red, and I worried about his blood pressure. This isn't about jealousy, I said firmly. This is about respect and recognition. You took my financial support for granted while planning to essentially disinherit me. That sent a clear message about how you value my contributions to this family. We never meant to hurt you, Mom said, her eyes filling with tears again. We just thought since you're so successful, you didn't need anything from us. I didn't need anything from you, I agreed. But after giving you over $200,000, I certainly didn't expect to be treated as if my financial responsibility was a reason to exclude me from the family legacy. They left without resolving anything. As they walked away, I heard Dad say to Mom, "She'll come around. She always does. She can't stand to see us struggle. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't going to cave. The strategic pivot, when I invested in myself. Instead of engaging in the ongoing family drama, I channeled my energy into something positive. The $3,500 I was no longer sending to my parents. I invested it in expanding my side business, a financial literacy coaching service for women that I'd been running as a passion project on weekends. 4 years, I'd been helping female friends and colleagues understand investing, budgeting, and building wealth. I'd created spreadsheet templates, conducted informal workshops, and given one-on-one advice. Many had suggested I turn it into a business, but I never had the time or resources to fully commit to it. Now I did. I hired a web developer to rebuild my basic website into something more professional. I worked with a marketing consultant to refine my strategy and create valuable lead magnets. I invested in professional headshots and branding. I rented space at a local co-working center to hold in-person workshops, and I started hosting free financial literacy classes at the community center twice a month as a way to give back and find new clients. Within weeks, client inquiries were pouring in. Women who had attended my free workshops signed up for paid coaching packages. Word of mouth spread, and soon I had a waiting list. I was able to raise my rates, and still the demand grew. I also took my first real vacation in 5 years, a 2-week trip to Portugal that I'd always wanted to take but couldn't justify while supporting my family. I stayed in beautiful hotels, ate at amazing restaurants, toured historic sites, and took hundreds of photos. I posted a few tasteful pictures on Instagram with captions about investing in yourself and knowing your worth. One evening, sitting at a cafe in Lisbon watching the sunset over the city, I realized I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of my parents' financial problems was no longer on my shoulders. I was free to build my own life, to make choices that served my own well-being instead of enabling others' poor decisions. Meanwhile, the situation at my parents' house was deteriorating. Through family members, I heard that they had received formal foreclosure notices. Their car had been repossessed. Collection agencies were calling daily about the credit card debt. They were telling relatives that I had abandoned them in their time of need, conveniently leaving out the part about the will or the 5 years of financial support I'd provided. Dad called me one night, his voice less angry and more desperate. "The bank says they're starting the final foreclosure proceedings," he said quietly. "We have 60 days to come up with the past due amount, or we lose the house." "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "Have you talked to Megan about helping?" "She says she can't afford it," he admitted, a note of resignation in his voice. "That's unfortunate. I can recommend some financial advisors who might be able to help you restructure your debt. Or I could help you look at downsizing options. There are some nice condos in your area that would be more manageable." "We don't need advisors. We need our daughter back," Mom shouted in the background. "I'm still your daughter," I said, "but I'm no longer your bank." The reality check when Megan came to visit. About a month after I stopped the payments, my sister showed up at my door unannounced. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was working on content for my next financial literacy workshop. The doorbell rang, and there was Megan, looking different than I had seen her in years. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair wasn't styled. She had dark circles under her eyes, and she was wearing sweatpants and a plain t-shirt, a far cry from her usual carefully curated Instagram-ready appearance. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual defensive edge. I invited her in, offered her coffee, and waited. We sat at my kitchen counter, the silence stretching between us. "I had no idea you were paying their bills," she finally said, staring into her coffee mug. "They told me they were fine financially. When I asked why they changed the will in my favor, they said it was because you were so successful you didn't need anything from them." I nodded. "And now I understand why they did it. They knew I couldn't help them the way you have been. They knew if they split everything equally, you might expect me to contribute to their expenses, which I can't do. They were hoping you'd never find out and keep supporting them until—" She trailed off. "Until they died and you got everything," I finished for her. She looked down, ashamed. "Yeah, it was wrong. I should have questioned it more, but I was so used to them helping me that I didn't think about how they were affording it." "And what about now? What's happening at the house?" Megan sighed heavily. "It's bad. They're going to lose it unless something changes. Dad's trying to get a part-time job, but no one wants to hire a 62-year-old with health issues. Mom's talking about substitute teaching again, but that won't bring in nearly enough." "What about you?" I asked. "Are you still living there?" She nodded, then added, "But I've been trying to find a real job. I've had 3 interviews this week." It was the first time in her adult life I'd heard Megan talk about actual employment rather than another get-rich-quick scheme. "That's good," I said cautiously. "What kind of jobs?" "Administrative assistant positions. Nothing glamorous, but steady income with benefits." "I know I need to start somewhere." She hesitated, then added, "I've also been looking at apartments I could actually afford. I can't keep living in their basement, especially if they lose the house." I studied my sister's face, looking for signs that this was another manipulation. But her eyes were clear, her expression sincere. This seemed like a genuine wake-up call for her. "Why are you telling me all this?" I asked. "Because I need to apologize," she said. "I've been unfair to your whole lives. I took advantage of being the baby of the family. I let you carry all the responsibility while I avoided it. And then I had the nerve to be angry when you finally stood up for yourself." I wasn't sure what to say. This vulnerable, self-aware version of my sister was unfamiliar territory. "I don't expect you to start paying their bills again," she continued. "I just wanted you to know that I see what happened, and I'm sorry for my part in it." As she was leaving, she turned back. "They were wrong about the will, Julia. But they're still our parents, and they're scared. Maybe there's some middle ground where you can have a relationship with them without enabling their financial irresponsibility." I told her I'd think about it, and I did. That night, I drafted an email to my parents outlining conditions under which I'd consider helping them again, including family counseling, financial transparency, and a revised will that was fair to both daughters. I didn't send it yet, but it was a start. The crisis point, when reality hit home. 2 weeks after Megan's visit, the family crisis reached its peak. Aunt Sarah called to tell me Dad had been rushed to the hospital with chest pains. It wasn't another heart attack, thankfully, but severe anxiety and stress that was manifesting physically. The doctor had warned that if his stress levels didn't decrease, he was at high risk for a more serious cardiac event. I went to the hospital, of course. Whatever our financial disagreements, he was still my father. When I walked into his room, Mom was sitting beside his bed, holding his hand. They both looked up in surprise when I entered. "Julia," Dad said weakly. "You came." "Of course I came," I replied, moving to the other side of his bed. "You're my dad." Mom looked exhausted, with new worry lines etched around her eyes. The doctor says he needs to reduce his stress, but I don't know how that's possible when we're about to lose our home. I didn't respond immediately. Part of me was still angry that they were acting as if their financial crisis had fallen from the sky, rather than being partly of their own making. But seeing Dad in that hospital bed, connected to monitors, put things in perspective. Have you looked into any other options? I asked finally. Downsizing? Bankruptcy? Loan modifications? Mom shook her head. We've been so overwhelmed we don't even know where to start. Dad squeezed my hand weakly. I know we messed up, Julia. With the will, with everything. We took advantage of your generosity, and then made decisions that hurt you deeply. I don't expect you to bail us out again, but maybe you could point us in the right direction. You understand finances better than anyone in the family. It was the first genuine acknowledgement I'd heard from either of them about what they'd done. No excuses, no blame shifting, just a simple admission of wrongdoing and a reasonable request for guidance rather than money. I can help you figure out a plan, I said after a moment. But I need you both to understand something. I won't be paying your bills again. I will give you my time and expertise to sort through this mess, but not my money. Not after what happened. They both nodded, and Mom wiped away a tear. That's more than we deserve, she said softly. The resolution, when boundaries led to healing. After Dad was released from the hospital, I helped my parents develop a realistic financial recovery plan. I spent a weekend at their house, going through all their financial documents, creating spreadsheets, making phone calls to creditors, and researching options. The reality was stark. They couldn't afford to keep their house. Even if they both worked part-time, their income wouldn't cover the mortgage and other expenses. They had too much debt relative to their assets to qualify for most loan modifications. And their retirement income wasn't enough to maintain their current lifestyle. You have two viable options, I told them as we sat at their kitchen table. You can sell the house now, on your terms, use the equity to pay off most of your debts, and downsize to something affordable. Or you can wait for foreclosure, damage your credit further, potentially owe a deficiency judgment, and have fewer housing options afterward. They chose to sell. With my help, they found a real estate agent, listed the house, and accepted an offer within 3 weeks. The sale price wasn't what they had hoped for, but it was enough to pay off the mortgage and most of their credit card debt. With the remaining proceeds, they put a down payment on a small 2-bedroom condo in a 55-plus community about 20 minutes away. Throughout this process, Megan surprised everyone by stepping up. She helped our parents pack and declutter. She held a yard sale to sell furniture that wouldn't fit in the condo. She even contributed some of her earnings from her new administrative job to help with moving costs. The most significant change, though, came 3 months after I stopped payments. My parents asked if I would come over for dinner at their new condo. I agreed, but made it clear I wasn't going to discuss financial support. When I arrived, they had a notarized document on the table, a new will that split everything equally between Megan and me. They also had a repayment plan for the money I'd given them, starting with small monthly payments of $100. We know this doesn't even begin to repay what we owe you, Dad said, his voice breaking. Not just the money, but the trust we broke. We took advantage of your generosity and betrayed your trust. We don't expect you to forgive us right away, but we hope this is a start. Mom reached across the table and took my hand. We were wrong, Julia. We've had a lot of time to think about how we treated you differently from your sister all these years. We rewarded her dependence and took your independence for granted. It wasn't fair, and we're truly sorry. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about respect and acknowledgement. The fact that they recognized the real problem meant more to me than any inheritance. Thank you, I said simply. This is a good first step. The aftermath, 6 months later. It's been 6 months since I found that will. My financial coaching business has grown beyond what I ever imagined. I've hired an assistant to help manage the administrative side, and I've been approached by a publisher about writing a book on financial literacy for women. I've helped dozens of women take control of their finances and set boundaries with family members who try to take advantage of their success. I was able to reduce my hours at my corporate job to focus more on my business, and my income has actually increased. I've also started looking at houses, not just a larger condo, but an actual house with a yard in a neighborhood I love. It's something I couldn't have considered while supporting my parents. Megan has been employed at the same administrative assistant position for 4 months now, a personal record for her. She's taking classes at community college in accounting, having discovered she actually enjoys working with numbers. She moved into her own small apartment and is paying her own bills for the first time in her adult life. We're not best friends, but we're rebuilding our relationship on more honest terms. My parents are adjusting to their new life in the condo. It's been a difficult transition for them, downsizing from a 4-bedroom house to a small condo, but they've adapted better than I expected. Dad's health has improved now that the financial stress has been reduced. He's picked up a part-time job as a consultant for a small local business, which gives him some extra income and keeps him active. Mom has started substitute teaching again and joined a book club in their new community. They've made their small $100 monthly repayments to me faithfully, which I've accepted more as symbols of respect than actual restitution. At that rate, it would take them over 170 years to repay the full amount, but that's not the point. The payments represent their acknowledgement of what happened and their commitment to change. Perhaps the most important change, though, has been within me. I've learned that true generosity comes with boundaries, that helping others shouldn't mean hurting yourself, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their poor choices. I've also learned to value myself more. For years, I defined my worth by how much I could do for others, how responsible I could be, how many burdens I could carry. Now I understand that I deserve to enjoy the fruits of my labor, to invest in my own happiness, and to be appreciated for my contributions rather than exploited for them. If you're in a similar situation, the responsible one who's always expected to bail everyone out, remember this: you deserve to be appreciated, not exploited. Your success doesn't obligate you to support others who won't support themselves. And sometimes, the most powerful word in your financial vocabulary is no. I don't regret helping my parents when they truly needed it, but I'm glad I finally stood up for myself when that help turned into entitlement. My bank account is healthier, but more importantly, so are my relationships, now built on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. I won't tolerate disrespect anymore, and I'm living my own life now. And it's a pretty good one. The end.